Are your night photos coming out like this?
Bruh.
And this?
Oh!
Let's fix that. Nighttime can be one of the hardest conditions to photograph in, but I'm here to show you that it doesn't have to be. If you're like me and work a 9-to-5 job, our only time to practice is after work. And as the winter rolls in, the days are getting shorter. When it is time to clock out of work, it's already dark out. The night has always made me hesitant from taking photos, but I'm trying to change that. And maybe I can help you too. So in this video, I'm gonna whet your appetite by showing you the unique visual effects that you can get at night, the mind shift that is required to shoot in low light conditions, and the necessary gear so you can get the best quality photos. But first, let me show you the night photos I took in my early beginner days before I applied any of the tips I'm about to give you.
Bruh. Bruh. Bruh.
Throughout the video, I will be using the terms night and low light interchangeably, as the advice I'm going to give you applies to both conditions. Let's start off with the funnest topic on the list, visual effects. Leveraging the visual effects I'm about to show you will add some spice to your photography.
I had a client asking me for a nighttime portrait shoot, but she had one request. She didn't want the normal photos of her posing and me shooting with a flash. She wanted some type of artistic flair to her portraits, something more than just her smiling at the camera. After some research, I found the perfect technique to use. I dubbed this visual effect my secret weapon to capturing creative portraits. As you can see, there is motion blur on the subject and background while still maintaining a focal point. In order to get an image like this, we need to utilize a photography technique called shutter drag. Now, this technique can be a whole video in and of itself, but to quickly summarize, you'll need a key light on your subject and ambient lights in the background. This key light can be a flash on your camera. As you're shooting, keep that shutter speed low and play around with having your subject move as that shutter is open to get different variations of motion.
If you're looking to capture images that'll stun your non-photography friends, emphasis on non-photography, light trail photos are always my go-to to blow people's mind, like, what? You can do this in camera? This isn't Photoshop? In order to nab yourselves one of these images, you'll need a fast-moving object emitting light going through your frame. Usually that'll be a car, but any moving object will do. In tandem with light trails, you can take this one step further and make light art. This takes the same concepts from light trails, except now you're using the light to make more interesting shapes. I will warn you that whenever my friends and I try to do this, it does take us a lot of practice to perfect the motion to get the shape that we want. The most important camera setting you need to focus on in order to get any of these effects is shutter speed. I have talked about it before on this channel, maybe a little bit too much. But as you've seen, this setting does some pretty cool shit at night. Keep that shutter speed slow. I would start off at 1 second and then adjust based on the available lighting within your scene. In daylight, your environment is lit up and almost anything can be used as a subject. But when the sun sets and the darkness rolls in, the game changes completely. As a result, we as photographers must also change our approach in the way we find interesting things to photograph. Some subjects that look cool in daylight might not look cool at all in night, and that's okay. I will show you what goes through my head when I'm shooting at night. Look for sources of light. It seems pretty obvious, but I want you to consciously look out for any sources of light within your environment. It could be street lights, car lights, billboards, neon signs, you name it. These sources of lights act as cues for your brain to see if you can use them to illuminate a subject, or they can act as the subject. A unique characteristic of nighttime lighting is that it's easier to play with colored lights. My favorite is using neon signs to add additional mood to my portrait photography. After you have identified your light source, your next objective is to look for a subject to place in the light, whether that is a person, an object, or anything really that can act as a focal point for your image. To make more creative images, make use of reflective surfaces in your environment. Look around in your environment for surfaces you can reflect light off of. I personally look out for rain, sources of water, cars, and windows. This is personal preference, but I think reflective surfaces look way more interesting at night compared to daytime. Then decide on what visual effects you want and dial in your camera settings so you can achieve those. Try to get all the visual effects you want in camera to save you some time from editing in post. To bring together all the previous ingredients, you need to compose your image. Whether that is through traditional composition rules, which I have videos for on my channel, or by composing in whatever way that makes you happy. Because at the end of the day, we take photos in order to please us. It would also please me if you hit the like button so this video can spread to others who are struggling with night photography.
Gear doesn't matter.
Gear
Doesn't.
matter.
Nah. Gear matters. Only a little bit. Here is why I'm challenging those claims.
In my photography 101 class, we had an assignment to study low light photography. In the assignment brief, my professor gave us a recommended gear list along with Amazon links. Me, being the broke college student that I was way too cheap to bother purchasing any of the gear he recommended. So all I had was my handy dandy DSLR. In the assignment review with my professor, he said something along the lines of, "Okay, let's take a look at these photos. Pretty good, right?" Joey, you need to try harder. What do you mean I need to try harder? That was my best work.
And here I am as your photography teacher. Thanks for listening to me.
So after that embarrassment, I decided I've had enough. I'm gonna take out a loan, shell out money. I did not take out a loan, by the way, and purchased myself a tripod.
You need these when you're shooting in low light conditions. There is a very high chance you will be shooting at slower shutter speeds. If you were to try to take those images handheld, your image would come out super blurry due to the camera shake introduced by your hand. If you want to see a more in-depth explanation, see my video on shutter speed. The tripod provides a mobile steady surface for your camera to balance on to remove all of that camera shake. There are so many catastrophic mistakes that I made in my early days that I think you could learn from in order to fast track your progression, which is why you should watch my video on the 3 regrets I had that held me back as a beginner.